Okay, we're gonna get started. This is the Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined to my far right by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District, member of the committee. Starting to my far left, Councilman Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District, member of the committee. Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District. And I believe I saw Councilman James Torrance, 7th District. We are expecting other members. You will hear me periodically during the hearing pause once the person currently speaking is done to introduce those other members of the committee and the council as they arrive. To my immediate right is Nia Garrett, who is staff to the committee. We're also joined by members of the mayor's office and the council president's office. So we are here for 2 bills today. Before we get started, I want to run through the run of show and discuss the ground rules with everyone and make sure everyone understands how we're going to move forward with today's proceedings before we begin. So we have 2 bills, and I am making an accommodation at the lead sponsor's request that we will call both of those hearings to order at the same time. So that means that testimony that's provided today will be included in the bill file for both of the bills because the sponsor expects the conversation to be interchangeable, right? So we might be talking about Bill A, and then we got to immediately shift to Bill B. And for legislative efficiency, I'm not going to pause the hearing and put it into recess and start a new hearing and then go back and forth, right? So we want to make today an efficient experience for everyone. So now that we've gone through kind of the boilerplate introductions, what'll happen next is I will turn it over to the 2 sponsors for brief introductory remarks. So they'll provide you with some background or whatever information they want to provide you with on why they've introduced the legislation that is before the council for its consideration. Then we will move to what are known as agency comment reports. So all these folks sitting in the council member chairs work for various city agencies and presumably will be testifying today. So we will go through each agency, and because we've called 2 hearings to order, I will ask them to provide their agency comments for Bill A, and then to provide their agency comments for Bill B, or the second bill, okay? We will hold on questions from members of the committee and the council until all of the agencies have completed their agency comment reports, right? So during that period, the only people that will be speaking are the agency officials that are sitting at these desks once the chair recognizes them, okay? Once that's completed, then members of the committee and the council will have an opportunity to ask them questions. Why did you say the number 13 in your report? Shouldn't it be 14? Why did you say this is legal when it's not legal? Things like that. Please expand on what you said in your report, those types of things. Once the questions of the agency officials sitting at these desks have concluded, we will then go to members of the public to testify. Now, there were a couple sign-in sheets out front. It doesn't matter which sign-in sheet you signed in on. Everyone will have an opportunity to testify today. Once we get through calling everyone who's physically signed in on these sheets, I will then make a call to see if there's anyone else who has not had an opportunity to testify, wishes to testify on this matter. We will not, I repeat, we will not be taking virtual testimony. So we have not taken virtual testimony in this committee in a little over 2.5 years. I don't want to change that precedent, and we're not going to change that precedent. Members of the public who are not present with us today, physically in chambers, are able to watch these proceedings on Charm TV. So that, I believe that's channel 25 on Comcast. They are also able to watch it on the Charm TV live stream online, and they are also able to log in to the WebEx either in order to watch the video or if they don't have that technical functionality wherever they are, they can call in with a phone number so that they can listen to the proceedings. Now, I'm not sure of the Charm TV schedule for today, but all hearings are recorded by the good folks from Charm TV that are in that door that looks like a closet back there on the back right. And this will be posted to the YouTube channel for Charm TV. So this should be posted in the next 2 to 3 days. So there will be an archive video record of this. When we get to folks that are going to testify, we're going to give each member of the public 2 minutes to testify. When you come up, I'll give you some brief instructions and a timer. Naya, can you put that up on the big screen real quick, just so we can show folks? Thank you. There will be a timer up there, just like that, okay? When you get to the once you've done your 2 minutes, a buzzer will go off. It may not be loud enough for you to hear, but I'm gonna get your attention visually, and I'm gonna point at my watch, okay? That's an indication that you've hit your 2 minutes, okay? And the longer you go, my interruptions will become progressively less polite, okay? But we'll start off polite. Sir, I need you to wrap up, okay? And, expectation is that you wrap up, not because we don't want to hear what you have to say, but because we want to be respectful of everyone who's in these chambers today to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. Okay, so now that we've got the format and the run of show and the ground rules laid out, before we begin the hearing, and I don't want any questions about the merits of the bill or anything like that, are there any questions about the format or the rules? Let me ask one more time. Are there any questions about the format or the rules for today's hearing? Okay. Is there anyone in the room that disagrees with the statement that I can assume that everyone's silence indicates that you are in agreement with the format and the rules for today? Anyone that disagrees with that statement? Again, your silence indicates that you are okay and fully understand the format and the rules for today. Okay, great. Looking forward to an informative discussion with input from members of our community. We've also been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District member of the committee. Okay, I will turn it over for brief introductory remarks to Councilwoman Ramos, and then I will go to Councilman Torrance. And then once they have concluded, we will enter the next phase, which we all discussed, which is agency comment reports. Councilwoman Ramos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for your time today. Thank you to the agency representatives who are here and to the members of the public. I submitted, the councilman and I submitted detailed written testimony yesterday, and so you can go back to those comments. But we're here to discuss 23-0363 Land Bank Authority and 23-0362 in-rem foreclosure scope of subtitle. I'll start with the 23-0362. This bill allows for a land bank authority, once established, to conduct in-rem foreclosure actions on behalf of the city, and the other creates the land bank authority. And actually, let me just
Councilwoman, I'm going to ask you to start over because I made a mistake. I did not call the hearings to order, so I just want to make sure we do that. I apologize. So we are now in session for Council Bill 23-0362, in rem foreclosure, scope of subtitle, for the purpose of amending City Code Article 28, Subtitle 8.1, in rem foreclosure, vacant and abandoned property, to permit a land bank authority of Baltimore City to initiate and participate in certain in rem foreclosure proceedings on behalf of the mayor and city council of Baltimore, and providing for a contingent effective date. Bill number 2, which is also called to order. Council Bill 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, for the purpose of providing certain unamended authorizing language for context of this ordinance, establishing the Land Bank Authority of Baltimore City, providing for the authority's powers, duties, and limitations, providing for a board of directors, for the selection and term of the board's members, and for the powers and duties of the board, providing certain immunities, providing for certain tax exemptions, and generally relating to the establishment and operation of the Land Bank Authority, as authorized by the city charter. And we've also been joined by Councilwoman Danny McCray, 2nd District member of the committee. Councilwoman Ramos, if you could kindly start over, and I apologize for that inconvenience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, no worries. Again, I want to thank the agency representatives as well as members of the public for being here. We know that we are in a housing crisis in our state and in our city. There are over 13,000 properties with vacant building notices on them, many more that are uninhabited and likely ready to get a vacant building notice. A little over 20,000 lots, and Baltimore City only owns less than 1,000 of the vacant properties and half of the vacant lots. This is, obviously we know the challenges with vacant property, so I'm not going to go through all of those details, but it's very clear that we got where we are because of the racist housing policies that were passed in this very chamber in 1911. And spread like wildfire across the nation. That spawned a lot of disinvestment and racism in where people are living. And now we know that what is happening is affecting people's health. It is affecting our crime rates. It is affecting the quality of life for so many of our residents in Baltimore City. And as a matter of fact, the 21st Century Cities report shows that we are losing $200 million a year because of maintenance costs and also lost revenues. So I have constituents that live next to vacant properties and have so for over 30 years. And we also know that it has been almost 3 years since our firefighters died in the fire with a vacant property collapsing on them. So this moment really calls upon us to do something extraordinary. And frankly, we've already started that process, right? We have worked together to implement the in-rem process where the liens exceed the value of the property and the city can foreclose that, and the partnership with the courts. And I've been so honored to work with the administration on that. And Mayor Scott, GBC, and Build came together to put a policy together and a plan for raising the money that is needed to be able to do this work. And so what we're trying to do here by creating the land bank is add another tool to the toolbox. That is exactly what happens when there is a crisis. We throw everything at the crisis. When COVID happened, we threw everything at COVID. When gun violence was high and all of the tools were thrown at it, and look at what's happening now. So what we're proposing is simply another tool in the toolbox to be able to go to scale and work together to make sure that we are acquiring these properties and getting them to people who will do something with them with community input. We started our work when the councilman and I first came into office by convening a very diverse working group that has been meeting for almost 4 years to create this legislation. We started with, the land bank, we started with core values of equity, flexibility, transparency, community-driven, and efficiency. We recognize that what we have to do in areas that need it most needs a major shot in the arm, and this is what a land bank would do, is to create the acquisition and disposition of vacant and abandoned properties in areas that really need it most. And it does not take over DHCD. It is simply a way to add more capacity to the work. Our legislation begins where the 2009 efforts end. We use language from the charter and the state legislation and many hours of work with a diverse group of people, as well as working with the law department and the Center for Community Progress, which is the expert in this work nationwide. The most difficult part was actually coming up with a good definition for best outcome, because the land bank, the way that we've constructed it, is designed to make sure that the best outcome is available for residents. And we have a clear definition of what that is in the legislation. Again, it is really designed to add a tool and to add capacity. It is not designed to take anything away from DHCD. We did have a chart that we submitted with our testimony that I actually hesitated to do this, but it is a side-by-side related to between DHCD and the land bank to show what might be some of the differences and similarities. But let me go through the values that we came up with, and I will conclude in just a minute, Mr. Chair. You know, equity, I mentioned that again. The land bank is designed to do work in areas that really need it most. And we know from land banks across the country that they have been very successful in doing that. We actually, in the amendments, added very specific language that says that it is the intent of the council that the land bank would begin its work in areas that have more than 15 or 20% of vacancy, because those are the areas that need the most attention and need the most work. Efficiency and flexibility. This is a quasi-governmental entity, yes. It is a public-private partnership. It is designed to be able to be flexible, not having to hire people through the HR process. It is designed to work through the way that we have been doing this in terms of efficiencies and making sure that with a partnership with the Board of Estimates, with a few exceptions like anything that is surplus property, would not need to go to the Board of Estimates for approval, which slows down which increases the amount of time, reduces the amount of time that this becomes for disposition. However, the land bank would do all of this work ahead of time so that it is transparent. The land bank also has the flexibility and the authority to float bonds, borrow money, and be creative with financing. We need the money here. This is an opportunity for people who want to invest in Baltimore in a way that helps us with our goals and equitable development to be a part of the process. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this. This is community driven, okay? Again, we worked with a wide range of people on this, and there are specific notice requirements to communities. There are very specific language in the bill regarding the working with communities before any disposition or acquisition occurs. And in the amendments, we created a community advisory panel. And that panel will be created by the Board of the Authority so that there would be a check-in with community members that have been involved, but also if there is a problem at the community level, the community can go to this Community Advisory Board. And specifically, we'll be working on making sure that the agreements that are taking place between the land bank on behalf of the city and the buyers of the property. Transparency and accountability. The land bank will maintain a detailed inventory of properties, including the acquisition and disposition status, and ensure transparency for residents and buyers. So it is clear in the legislation, and we made it even clearer in the amendments, that everything that's going on with the properties that the land bank has interest in will be on the website and will be transparent. And will also show what the status is of acquisition and disposition. The land bank also has massive reporting requirements. The land bank has to report to the city council every 6 months, and also has to report to the General Assembly every year. And there's very specific reporting guidelines, requirements in the bill. We have an interim board. Also, they will be subject to the Open Meetings Act. We have an interim board that will help to establish the land bank, and then the board would be appointed through the mayor and council president process. So we have created this to be ultra transparent, ultra accountable, because this is such a crisis. We need to know exactly, as the public and the council, what is going on with acquisition and disposition, hold the land bank accountable, but also make sure that the job gets done. And also that the public can see what's happening as well. Land banks, there are over 200 across the country in places like Cleveland and in Detroit that have done an amazing job in those areas. We also, JP Morgan Chase came out with a report that I also added in the testimony that you can see for yourselves in terms of looking at what community development success looks like, and that land banks are part of that success. So, Mr. Chair and colleagues, I believe what we're trying to do here is just to do more to resolve this crisis, and that the land bank would allow us to do that in a transparent, equitable, and community-driven way. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to discuss it, and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, 5th District, member of the committee, and Councilman Zeke Cohen, 1st District. Councilman Torrance, floor is yours. Brief, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague has been very specific this morning. I'm going to be more humanistic. I represent communities in West Baltimore who are historically redlined. When we think about redlining, we think about systems and processes. What we found in looking at how we do development in the city, it is systems that stand in the way of humans having the right to have fair housing. It is systems that stand in the way of us doing development quicker and fast enough to address the needs of communities. I think that we need to be clear. This is an opportunity for us to create a system that is hyper-focused on communities such as Sandtown, Winchester. Such as communities in the 9th District that have extreme vacancy that we need to get to. I recognize that we've had a comprehensive housing plan that's coming forth. I recognize the impact investment zones, but I think that there's more that we can do. But I also agree with the administration. We need to create public-private partnerships. We need public intervention to get there. I agree with the commissioner that we need to do whole block strategies. But I think that we need someone who's hyper-focused on it in areas that we desperately need it to. This isn't a and or, it is a both approach. I recognize the work of the agency. I recognize the agency has done a litany in terms of changing its processes to be more community focused. There's much more that can be done. But I think that our communities are crying for results now. I say that as I just was at an expungement clinic on Bentlow Street this past Saturday. The same house that was vacant when I went to Carverville Tech and graduated in 2005, nearly 20 years later, still vacant today. When I say that, I think about people who've lived next door to homes that have been vacant for the entire ownership period of it, that they've had it. I think about neighbors that I've had to work with who are fighting because there are vacant properties on their street and they can't get homeowners insurance to insure their property because of the disinvestment that we have. I think that we are at a point where we've invested in core, and now we have land mass that we cannot have to, I say this, get all our 6 city agencies that cut grass on the same page about cutting it, right? I think that we have systems that stand in our way. I open us to a discussion about how we can change those systems, how we can be nimble and being urgent in communities that desperately need it. Because for my Black and brown neighbors who are walking past vacant properties, who are dealing with fires from squatters, who are dealing with the impacts of things that we do not control, we have an opportunity to put investment in neighborhoods so that people can be esteemed as they have made an investment in that neighborhood. I say that for the Black women in West Baltimore who've held up the tax base of the city of Baltimore, who are not giving the privileges and immunities as well as the benefits of paying those taxes all the time. We need to address this crisis not only in our middle neighborhoods, but in those neighborhoods that need a market created immediately so that we can bring about those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. So 2 quick modifications to today's agenda. Before the agency comments section, we're going to go to Deputy Mayor Justin Williams on behalf of the administration While this doesn't happen every hearing, this is something we do from time to time. The second thing is that during the DHCD presentation, that they have an actual presentation which will be put up in the large screen. So I want everyone to be aware of those two modifications. Deputy Mayor Williams, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. On behalf of the administration, Justin Williams, Deputy Mayor for Community and Economic Development. I'm Justin Williams, Deputy Mayor for Community and Economic Development. On behalf of the administration of Mayor Brendan Scott, I want to start by stating that we share the goals of the sponsors of the council bills before us today. The vacant housing crisis in Baltimore is a very serious issue, and it's one that affects every corner of our city. It underlies so many of our challenges and the challenges that communities face, whether it's crime, public health, or economic opportunity. So I sit here on behalf of the mayor to acknowledge that urgency, to recognize the shared commitment we all have to solving this problem. I know one day I'll be telling my grandchildren about the time I worked with the mayor in this administration to unveil one of the most ambitious and far-reaching plans in the country to address every single vacant property in the city. And it's not because we didn't know it'd be hard, but because we knew tackling the crisis head on was absolutely necessary if we want to build a better, more equitable city. So to be clear, the administration stands by the reasons outlined in our agency reports opposing the establishment of the land bank. I want to speak to something deeper though, because I understand where the sentiment comes from that Councilman Torrance referenced. There's a lot of frustration out there. People look at the state of our vacant properties and think to themselves, the city hasn't gotten this right. We need to look outside of the city government to fix it. And I get it, but the thing is, I'm a city official. I believe in the power of the city government to do big things, to innovate, to deliver for our residents. Doesn't mean the city hasn't made mistakes, but it does mean we can learn from them. We can improve, we can make the government more efficient and more effective without outsourcing our responsibilities. After graduating business school and law school, I came back to the city to work in city stat because I believed, and I still believe, the city has the capacity to solve its problems from the inside. I came back again after making partner in a law firm because I believe in helping the city, and we can fix our problems ourselves. But the issue we're facing, as was outlined earlier by Councilwoman Ramos, the issue is not about whether DHCD can or can't handle vacants. It's about the capital, or precisely the lack of it. As mentioned in the century of racist housing policies, we talked about this for years, but the cost of rehabbing a home in too many neighborhoods is higher than the value of the home once it's fixed up. That's not a failure of DHCD, that's a structural problem that goes back decades because of the racist housing policies. And if you want to understand why Baltimore, like so many cities, hasn't had the resources to fix this, we need to look at the history. And it's worth repeating in the face of media criticism of Baltimore, social and legacy media criticism. Thinking back to the 70s and 80s, when jobs left urban centers, we saw the dramatic reduction in federal support for cities. It's one fact I'd like to repeat and get out there in the ether more often, is in 1977, federal aid accounted for 17.5% of local government revenue. By 1990, it dropped to 5%. And while there was some progress under the Clinton administration, it was still just 5.4%. So that's the context the city's working in. But the good news is the stars are finally aligning on the budget side, because for the first time in generations, we have a mayor, a governor, a general assembly, key partners like the GBC, BUILD, all working together on a $3 billion plan to tackle this crisis. And we're making progress, and we're optimistic about the future support from a future Kamala Harris administration. But even without that $3 billion of support in the plan, the past 4 years, the Scott administration and DHCD have already made real gains. We've reduced the number of vacant properties by 16.5%. And then with this capital and the $3 billion plan, we are positioned to do so much more. So the question before us isn't whether we need a land bank. The question is whether, given this rare moment of political alignment, given the resources we now have access to, we can show that Baltimore's government is ready to deliver. I believe we can. Councilman Torrance mentioned your constituents crying out for results now, and I draw attention to DHCD's comments noting that one of the costs is not just money, but time of setting up a land bank. We're ready to go now. We know this work is tough. We know the frustrations people have are real. but also know that when we come together, when we bring all our energy, our innovation, and our resources to bear, we can get the job done. So thank you for your time, and thank you to the committee. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. Okay. So we will start with Department of Planning. And for each bill, now, not every agency was required or was referred both bills. So I may ask you to just explain what your position is on one or the other or both, depending on which bills were referred to your respective agency. So for Department of Finance, both bills were referred to you. So we'll start with 23-0362 in rem foreclosure, scope of subtitle. And Department of Finance's position is deferring to DHCD?
Correct.
Thank you. Anything to add to that?
Not at the moment, sir.
Thank you. Now, for Finance, Council Bill 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, Finance's position is opposed.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
And would you like to expand on that?
Yes, we believe that it would be duplicating efforts and that the money that would wouldn't then be needed to deferred to the land bank or diverted to the land bank, and that would need to come from somewhere, and it would come from vital city agencies.
Okay, thank you. As a reminder for everyone who's here, members of the public, these agency comment reports were submitted to the council and the committee in advance of the hearing. These are all available publicly. You can view these by going to the Baltimore City Council website, clicking on legislation at the top, searching for both bills, and you will see the agency comment reports there in PDF format. Okay, so Department of Finance is done. Let's go to Baltimore Development Corporation. We'll start with 23-0362 in rem foreclosure. Your position is unfavorable.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I echo my colleagues' comments. These two bills really don't have a lot to do with BDC's function, so we deferred to our conversations with other agencies, including housing, that these efforts would be duplicative, so we deferred to their comments as well to form our negative opinion.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone to use your outdoor voice because Department of General Services is doing maintenance on the building. Okay, Baltimore Development Corporation next on 23-0363 Land Bank Authority, unfavorable again.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, similar comments to the last bill.
Similar comments. Thank you. Okay, we will go to Department of Planning next. 23-0362 in rem foreclosure. No objection and defers to DHCD.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Tyler Schnella, Mayor's Office of Government Relations, standing in for planning, and they stand by their bill report.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add?
No.
Okay, and Department of Planning for Council Bill 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, no objection, defers to DHCD.
That is correct.
Anything to add?
Planning did highlight a specific concern around the composition of appointed members. They specifically highlighted that 2 members living in neighborhood statistical areas as determined by the Baltimore City Department of Planning, where 10% or more of the properties are abandoned or were abandoned in the past 10 years. Planning indicated that they were not sure that they would have the ability to make those determinations and would rely on DHCD for that information, which is why they deferred.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to the Board of Ethics. They have only been referred one of these bills. That's 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, no position.
Mr. Chair, Tyler Schnella, Mayor's Office of Government Relations, the Board of Ethics stands by their bill report.
Thank you. Okay, next we will go to the Office of the Comptroller. The only bill you have been referred is 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, opposed with comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Office of the Comptroller.
Casey, name, position.
Casey Keller, Director of Communications and Policy for the Office of the Comptroller. We oppose this bill, and we sent in some comments as well on behalf of the Department of Real Estate, who wasn't referred this bill, but would be impacted by some of the operations. Our comments are echoed by our colleagues here, so I won't go into it, but our major concern was based on accountability and the lack of neighborhood involvement that a land bank may create. A land bank is not a government agency and doesn't have the same accountability structures. There are no provisions for the city auditor to perform their biannual performance audits. It doesn't allow residents to submit Maryland Public Information Act requests. And it would operate outside of the direct control of the mayor, council, and board of estimates. For those comments and more, we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement. They have been referred 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, and they are unfavorable.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Zachary Wellman, policy analyst for the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. As stated in this report, the OECR requests an unfavorable report on Council Bill 23-0363 due to the equity repercussions that could result from diverting functions from the Department of Housing and Community Development to a separate land bank authority and the setbacks therein to Baltimore's vacancy strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that leaves law and DHCD. Are there any agencies that are here that I've skipped over who wish to testify on this? Okay, let's start with the Law Department. Council Bill 23-0362 in rem foreclosure. Law Department is unfavorable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ashley Brown for the Law Department. Because the land bank is not a city agency, as the bill is written, we could not approve it because there's not authority in the charter section for the land bank to stand in the shoes of the city. However, after we submitted our report, we did have a discussion about a contingency. So we could approve the bill with the contingency that state authorization would be needed. So it would not go into effect unless the General Assembly authorized the land bank to stand in the shoes of the city. So we could approve it if that amendment were in the bill.
And just a question for clarification, if an actual amendment was added to the bill or if the General Assembly actually took action?
So we would need an amendment to the bill that says there's the contingency, and then General Assembly would have to expressly authorize the land bank to stand in for the city.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then law next, 23-0363, Land Bank Authority, favorable with contingent upon amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We had several things that needed to come out because they were beyond the scope of the land bank's authority. And we've worked with the sponsor, and the sponsor has incorporated our required amendments with her amendments. So with those amendments, we could approve the bill.
Excellent. Okay, finally, DHCD. Commissioner Kennedy, I'm gonna turn it over to you in a second. I'm going to ask that you start off by introducing first and last name and position title of all your folks that are here with us that are going to be testifying in the council member seats. I understand that we did not yet have a position on the in rem foreclosure hearing or bill at the time of this hearing. Again, I'm looking at, okay, I'm mistaken. That's okay. And unfavorable on the Land Bank Authority. So Commissioner Kennedy, before we get started, I understand you have a presentation. Do we want to pull that up on the, who's in charge of that? That's us, we're in charge. Okay, great, so that's fixed. Commissioner Kennedy, how much time do you anticipate needing for this presentation?
I am hoping to move through this within about 15 minutes,
Give you
Or
15
less.
and a half minutes.
15 and a half.
15, 20 minutes, that sounds very reasonable. So Commissioner, please introduce your folks and then take it away. Thank you.
Not needing the outside voice at this exact moment. So, Alice Kennedy, Housing Commissioner for the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm here today with Kimberly Rubens, our Chief of Data, our Chief of Policy and Research, under which also is our Research and Data team. Also here with Assistant Commissioner Tamara Woods, and also our newest position that actually started yesterday. It is our Chief of Implementation and Innovation. Mary Colleen Bittner is with us, and so she is jumping right in as part of this. The Chief of Implementation and Innovation is a position that reports directly to the Commissioner and is responsible for coordinating the efforts across the agency and with the state for the reduction of and prevention of vacants within the agency. We also have with us Scott Davis, our Chief of Staff, and Theo Ngongong, our Chief Operating Officer, along with a number of city DHCD employees that are with us today as well. I think we are just working on getting the, got it. Okay. So we're here today to talk about 23-0363, the Land Bank Authority, as well as 23-0362. For both of those bills, we stand by our bill reports as unfavorable. We understand at DHCD that the vacant crisis has been looming for far too long, and that people across our city have been suffering and are impacted by vacant properties on a daily basis. We also know that this is bigger than the built environment for our city. This is about the humans that live in our city from birth to death, and what can we do to ensure that we're taking a comprehensive and holistic approach to prevention and elimination of vacant properties in the city of Baltimore. The vacants reduction is something that, over the years, there have been different entities in terms of, at one point, city government with the Housing Authority under the moniker of Baltimore Housing was charged with trying to reduce the number of vacant properties in the city of Baltimore through different programs. The big thing that has changed is the separation of the Department of Housing and Community Development from the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. The implementation and the release of the Framework for Community Development in 2019 to really laser focus and hyper focus on how to reduce vacants in our city using a comprehensive, holistic strategy, looking at achieving whole block outcomes, as well as with a primary focus as well on the prevention of vacants and lifting up all of the members of our communities. We aren't perfect as an agency, but we do strive to become better. We strive to be responsive. We strive to respond to our constituents' concerns. We strive to be innovative. We strive to create efficiencies, to break down silos, to better our communications, and to be better. As Deputy Mayor Williams stated in his remarks as well, that sometimes there is this idea that something needs to happen outside of city government. We're confident in where we are today with the growth that we've had over the last 4 or 5 years in being able to do this work and to do this work at scale. The mayor's $3 billion finance strategy is a 15-year plan that will reduce vacant properties across that time period with the additional influx of funding. If we maintain the same level of funding that we have on this problem, over the last 10 years or so, it would take us 375 years to get to a zero vacant property in the city of Baltimore. We know that nobody in this room has 375 years to wait because the residents of the city of Baltimore have been waiting too long. So I want to thank Chairman Costello as member of the committee. We definitely agree with intention. We agree, and as I just stated, that we know that we have to take this to scale. We know that we need to and are implementing and innovating in order to be effective and efficient and to ensure that programs are funded that reduce our vacant property inventory and to put properties into the hands of persons, our residents, our partners, that will make our neighborhoods stronger and that will create opportunities for all different types of housing opportunities, income levels, and to create vibrant and thriving and diverse communities. DHCD is already doing this with results. We are doing this, like I said, in a comprehensive and holistic manner. It isn't just about acquiring properties and disposing of properties. This is about the planning work that happens with our communities. It is about the block level planning, the parcel level planning with our communities. It is about the vacant lots. It is about the infrastructure work. It is about the coordinated approaches that need to happen on all of those fronts. Investment in recreation, investment in lighting, investment in sidewalks. We can't be focused on this without the coordinated approach to tackling all of the different components that provide our neighbors and our neighborhoods and our constituents with the necessities that they need to be thriving in their communities. We also believe that the time of starting up a land bank, moving forward, having to fund the land bank would take time, and that we don't have that time also to afford. We have a plan. We've been implementing a plan. We have a financing strategy, and we're working with the state on that financing strategy as well and planning strategy. We are working in neighborhoods that are not just the impact investment areas. We are working in all 42 neighborhoods that have, in some level, that have vacancies greater than 10%. I do want to just go through some of the facts that we'll go through here real quick to year to date. We've already demolished 101 vacants. We've issued 858 use and occupancy permits. We have 195 acquisitions that are completed with an additional 1,308 underway. We've completed 133 dispositions with 133 underway. We've preserved 118 homes through home repair grants or loans. We have 146 under contract. We've issued over 30,000 permits, completed over 103,000 inspections, and helped 402 households purchase a home with home buyer incentives. We have acquired 201 properties through in-rem tax lien foreclosure with an additional over 620 underway and in the pipeline. And I'm proud to work alongside all of the over 400 staff members at DHCD to comprehensively and holistically do this work. So I want to talk here a little bit about how the Land Bank Authority is duplicative of DHCD. The authority itself is not a new tool. It is a duplicative entity. We are going to go through as well and break down a little bit of the comparison chart that was provided by the sponsors just for some points. One, in terms of oversight and accountability and transparency. The mayor and the city council are hired by the citizens of Baltimore. And as an agency, we are accountable to fulfilling the needs of those citizens. The land bank would be accountable to the board of directors and their investors. And, you know, while it would be subject to Open Meetings Act, also in the same way, you know, regular daily business and deliberations would be, part of the staff of the land bank as it is as part of the staff of DHCD. In terms of a financial plan, the chart mentioned that DHCD does not have a financial plan. We do have a financial plan. We submit a financial plan every year. It is our budget. We have a capital budget and an operating budget. It's public information. It's subject to review by the city council, the planning commission. And we also have a financial plan that is in partnership with the state of Maryland to fund $3 billion to reduce the vacants across the city. In terms of an audit, we're actually audited every 2 years by the Comptroller's Office and the Department of Audits, but then we also are part of the single audit that happens every year within the city of Baltimore. We provide multiple annual reports on a number of different we produce multiple annual reports on a number of different topics, and in partnership with the state, we're putting together the framework for an annual report regarding vacancy prevention and reduction. In terms of hiring practices, we do work in partnership with DHR, and we have been able to create positions in about 2 months. Necessarily does not take a year to create those. And when the stars align and people respond and accept and go get the background checks and necessary, we actually have been able to hire from the time of posting the position to getting the interview packet to making the job offer to having that person start within about 6 weeks. So in terms of also acquisition, you know, the big thing is that, you know, one of the things that the Land Bank Authority would say is that it would be a receiver. One of the things to remember is that a receiver is, you know, must be auctioned to the highest bidder that comes along, and that it is not a form of acquisition that happens. So, you know, we also wanted to talk about the best outcome, which was one of the items. You know, I think that best outcome and sometimes best use are not mutually exclusive, and that this is also part of the conversations and the block level planning that we have with community in terms of thinking through and having what community wants to see in their vacant lots, what do they want redeveloped, what do they want as green space, permanent green space, recreation space, and so forth. So, you know, the other additional piece in terms of capacity that I wanted to start on and mention here briefly as well is that DHCD currently has over 400 staff members. We work holistically across all of the 6 operating divisions of the agency, and we're currently hiring we are in the process of actually hiring an additional 50 staff. We have the capacity to decrease vacants at this moment faster than any agency or entity has had in the city of Baltimore in the last 20 years. The Land Bank is proposing 39 employees. We don't feel that that is enough to be able to do the work effectively. The Detroit Land Bank is budgeted right now. They have 150 employees, but also still that is an unfunded for this land bank. There is not an existing funding source to even support the operating costs and the employees that are stated. So we are already addressing and our position to address the vacancy crisis. So one item, we utilize all of the tools in the toolbox that are also proposed for the Land Bank Authority. As it was stated by the Law Department, the Land Bank Authority would not have the stated authority to do in-rem acquisition until and if and when the state were to provide that enabling legislation and functionality. And there's considerable operational and capital costs that would be needed to stand up the authority, which are not concretely identified nor outlined. And the Land Bank Authority also does not incorporate the prevention work and other pieces, infrastructure work, et cetera, that are part of creating whole block outcomes and providing the necessities that we need for our communities. We have been having significant progress within the city of Baltimore. Under Mayor Scott's leadership, we've worked closely with the state, particularly the Moore Miller administration and other stakeholders, and we have created the funding and a comprehensive strategy to continue to reduce the number of vacants in the city of Baltimore. We have the ability to show that over the next 15 years, this will continue to reduce to 0 vacant properties. DHCD is the lead agency for many elements of the strategy, and that draws from years of expertise, established programs, processes, and longstanding partnerships that have delivered tangible results. But I'd also say that that is also while we have been creating new processes, changing processes based on feedback that we've received from the communities, and implementing new programs, having plans for new ideas that are needed to implement this work at scale. We've received both local and national recognition for the work that we are doing to address vacants. And once again, the state has made historic investments in the city because of the results that we've been able to deliver. The momentum.
Commissioner, can you pause, hold that for a second? Charm City TV staff? Okay. We're not going to go into recess, but I'm just going to ask everyone to pause. I'm going to go check in with Charm TV real quick because I think they may have gone down.
He knew it was going to be longer. He knew.
Okay, Charm TV's working. Commissioner, please continue. I apologize for the interruption.
Now the clicker. Yeah, okay, there we go. So DHCD is a full stack development agency, and one of the biggest things that we've been working on over the last four years is actually breaking down silos to ensure that every single division within the agency and every single function of the agency is in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. We've worked to create synergy between the divisions that helps us to be able to move decisively, swiftly, and with purpose. And we were able to come together to make sure that the block level planning, the planning work that we do with our communities is able to be addressed with that intent and to be able to make the decisions and pivot as needed between demolition to renovation to code enforcement, et cetera. Next slide, please. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how we are accelerating the elimination of vacants. Next slide. We have our fiscal year 2025 delivery plan where we're singly focused on the goals of reducing vacant buildings and producing whole block outcomes. We're doing the work where there are significant concentrations of vacants in our neighborhoods, and not just in the impact investment areas. It is also where we have concentrations of vacants in our geographies of focus, and we have also what we've termed our asset building community engagement areas. A key part of developing this plan was actually identifying pain points in existing processes and executing on solutions. This is one reason why we have a new chief of implementation and innovation as part of the team to help lead this work and move forward. Next slide. We're working with the state partnership in deploying the $50 million in strategic demolition and project core funds, which is an increase of over 150%. As Secretary Day stated and noted when learning about the strategies at play, what we're doing, how we're implementing the work in partnership with communities, he said that DHCD is an agency in need of additional resources, not in need of redirection. There are key partners in reducing vacants, from our strategy development to funding to implementation. Next slide. Community outreach and engagement, we believe strongly in partnerships and understand that the work that we do can only happen with understanding the vision that the communities have for their neighborhoods. We have several programs that help us engage with the public. We won't go into any of those, all of them, because we could be here for another 4 hours or longer. But I want to say that our neighborhood development officers are on the first line for our development division, working with communities and participating in outreach events. We are building out our redevelopment strategy team, whose job it will be to lead communities envisioning and reimagining vacant buildings and vacant lots in their neighborhoods. The community engagement work will inform any creations of the RFPs. It also is informing the more recent release of our request for qualifications for developers. Community engagement is the cornerstone of the work that we've been doing over the last several years with our impact investment areas. And there are several aspects like our community conversations, where we have open invitations to entire communities and residents and have done outreach to include them to provide information, resources in moving this forward. Next slide. The other piece, we have the Mayor's Neighborhood Subcabinet. DHCD and the Department of Planning staff work with community groups to present to the mayor, the deputy mayor, the CAO, and cabinet members to provide updates, uplift pressing issues, and help unblock items that would need or barriers to help us achieve results. Key community members, development partners are invited to attend as well. Next slide. We're also accelerating through the Baltimore's first citywide housing plan. This is not just around vacancy and blight. The housing plan is action-oriented and intentionally focused on expanding our affordable housing options, mitigating and eliminating displacement for current residents, and building trust within our communities. The plan, with an anticipated release for the Q1 of 2025, will be a plan for every single neighborhood within the city of Baltimore. We also do hope that you come to our upcoming housing plan town halls. I'd be remiss if I did not plug those. The first one is on Monday, September 23rd at Cherry Hill Elementary Middle School, starting at 6 p.m. And the next will be Saturday, October 5th at Poly, starting at 10 a.m. Next slide. We also are accelerating through our housing preservation and anti-displacement work. We are a comprehensive agency that supports the full breadth of vacancy prevention and elimination in the city, from preventing a vacant for every to helping residents get their use and occupancy permit. We assist current homeowners with financial assistance, home renovations, as well as helping them make sure that they're aware of the different tax incentives and so forth that need to happen to preserve our residents and help them also achieve and realize value and generational wealth, where they have seen that generational wealth disappear over the years of disinvestment that has happened. We also have, on our next slide, our middle neighborhood strategy. This is where we are talking about multiple different neighborhoods. There are some vacants that do happen in our middle neighborhoods that overlay with some of our impact investment areas. Working with the Department of Planning and Live Baltimore, we have a strategy to help make sure that those neighborhoods remain stable, that we prevent vacancy, and that we also have necessary funding that's available to support the renovation and work that needs to happen in those neighborhoods as well. Next slide. We also have expanded our development team. The development division is pivotal to the work of vacancy reduction. There's 3 sections: the legal section, project finance, and land management. And together they formulate the team that focuses on community engagement, acquisition, disposition, and capital to execute and finance projects on development projects. In order to meet the scale of the vacancy reduction strategy, Mayor Scott and the administration has been supportive, and over the past 4 years, the division has almost doubled, growing from 55 employees to 101 employees and positions. The legal section now has an assistant commissioner over the legal section and hired the managing attorney. There are 30 legal staff positions in the legal staff. In addition to the 13 in-rem attorneys, we also have the 4 title attorneys and 11 paralegals that are working. Out of the in-rem attorneys, we do have positions posted. We have 4 positions posted right now. We are doing interviews. If you know anybody, please send them our way. And we are actively also filling the last title attorney position. We created those positions across the years of fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, and are increasing the number of staff members that are needed to do this work. The other key piece has been the fixed pricing model that worked to streamline the disposition process and make it very clear and understandable for properties that are available on Buy It to Baltimore what the price is. So it takes out and removes that guessing estimates for the project and makes developers and homeowners able to understand what the price would be for the properties. We also have done work on upgrading the permit system, not just working on the actual system itself to user-friendly, but also looking at the workflows, additional staff, and we also ensured that working with BSIT, we developed a permit call center that increased call answer rates to over 98%. Next slide will show the breadth of information access and data tools. Right now, DHCD has more than 100 publicly available data layers and 5 publicly available dashboards from market data to neighborhood level demographic profiles. In addition, to the different block level and parcel level planning work that we do, it is coded that allows us to help make those financial models and work plans for the divisions and have modernized our technology infrastructure. We also invested in our Telemi suite, which is Slate, which helps us manage all of the work from filing and in-rem, doing title work and filing a case all the way through acquisition to disposition to compliance, where we've also increased our compliance staff and work there. Next slide and final is our code enforcement. This takes integrated code enforcement, working with the team to make sure that we are tackling the vacant properties, making sure that we're issuing the failure to abate citations, making sure that we are also issuing new vacant building notices as needed while we work to eliminate vacant buildings as well. I want to appreciate, and I appreciate the opportunity to present today before the committee. I want to echo again that we have shared goals. We want to see the reduction of vacant properties. We want to see the reduction of vacant properties in a community collaborative, efficient process. We know that there is no time to wait because our communities and our residents have waited long enough. DHCD is not only prepared, but we are actively implementing the work to take this to scale. We are committed to transparency, we are committed to accountability, we are committed to flexibility and efficiency, and we are committed to community. We are also committed to innovation and looking at ways that we can innovate and create the outcomes that we also want to see. The land bank, as I stated before, is not a tool in of itself. It is an unfunded entity. It's duplicative of DHCD's efforts. And we have excellent momentum right now in our city. And I would ask that we coalesce around that momentum and collectively move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes DHCD's agency comments and presentation, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. We will now move to questions from members of the committee and the council for the agencies. Once we conclude with that, we will then move into public testimony. So I know the sponsors have a number of questions, so as a courtesy to the members of the committee, I'm going to start with committee members and then I will go to the sponsors and allow them to exhaust the balance of the time. So let's start with Councilwoman McCray. Any questions? Thank you. Councilman Stokes? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look at Broadway East and South Clifton Park and Dolly Park and Greater Greenmount, and I don't see no impact of a lot of bills that have been introduced in this council. I keep hearing the word equity. We still throwing it up against the wall. It has nothing changed. When I look at my colleague talk about our seniors that live next door to properties, they've been living next door for the last 30 years, and I don't see an impact at all. So having this hearing, and even if you're talking about the land banking, I talked to a lot of community associations in my district. Nobody came to their community to explain what land banking is. Nobody. So we want to sit here and talk about land banking. Nobody went to Broadway East. Nobody went to Dolly Park. Nobody went to South Clifton Park. And nobody went to Greater Greenmount. So how do you now want to create land banking when you haven't even been to the community where it's really impacting where they already live at? And I'm talking about black and brown people that got to live next door to the mess. They've been living next door for 30 years. So I hope coming out of this hearing that at least those communities where it's already impacting them, that we go and talk to them first before we talk about implementing land banking in this city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Vice President Middleton.
This question is for housing. The sponsors of this bill, you know, they continue to say in their presentation that this is a tool in the toolbox. And they have been meeting, as you heard, basically just about every Friday morning for the last almost 4 years. I'd like you to respond to that, because I'm a person that believes that to move forward with things in the city, especially housing, we need those extra tools. We need partnerships. We, you know, I represent an area where a lot of vacant and abandoned houses are. How, you know, I'm just still puzzled of why a partnership hasn't been built, at least with this team that has been working for so long with, you know, other entities to just really try to get this initiative moving. I'd like you to respond.
Thank you, Councilwoman Vice President Middleton. As I stated in my remarks, we do not look at the land bank as a new tool in a toolbox. It is a duplicative entity of an agency that exists that would be utilizing all of the tools in addition to actually more tools than what the land bank would be utilizing to comprehensively and holistically approach and reduce the number of vacants to create whole block outcomes. The land bank, you know, is not focused on prevention of vacants. It's not focused on the infrastructure components around reducing vacant properties. And, you know, some might say that the financing authority, you know, in the legislation for the land bank to be able to do bonding could be a new tool, but, you know, we have the authority and the ability to do bonding with the city and with the state partnership and other state agencies. So we also don't need another entity to be able to create the additional bonding authority. There also is, you know, no understanding of how the land bank would manage that debt service, or at what point in time could a land bank actually go to market on those bonds in terms of being able to do that. You know, you have to be able, bonds are typically 20 or 30-year bonds. You have to be able to show the debt service. You have to be able to be attractive, you know, for that. So in that essence, we don't see that the land bank is a new tool. It's duplicative. We have over 400 staff members that are actively doing this work. With the support of the administration, we've increased the number of staff in very key areas that are needed to take this to scale. And we have been responsive and meet with partners that some of those partners are part of and have been part of, the sponsors working group. And we have our own meetings with those partners and have been responsive to concerns that they've had and have involved them in looking at our disposition methods. We've taken feedback on acquisition components and will continue to do so as well. We know that as an agency, we're not perfect, but we also are committed to partnerships and committed to figuring out how we can best do this work, together, and as an agency, be responsive to changes that we need to see that are needed to take it to scale. We just don't feel that an entirely new entity that as of this moment also would not have a key access to one of the key tools in the toolbox, because the entity would not be able to do in-rem tax lien foreclosure, that it makes sense to enter into something that would need to create a new entity with limited funds and lack of funding. The other piece that I will say that I didn't touch on is that the city of Baltimore does have the ability to also attract philanthropic support and business support. We often receive grant funding that supports different positions. We have partnerships in place that can also support additional positions. We also can take advantage of federal funding, state funding, and philanthropic funding to support this as well. So the land bank is not unique in that effort. So I would say that it's duplicative, that we are actively scaling. We are working with communities to create the block level planning to make sure that everybody is rowing in the same boat, that we know what properties are to be demolished, what properties are redeveloped, what properties are green space, what properties are being assembled for site assembly, for future redevelopment. And we're committed to doing that and expanding partnerships. And we have had a number of those conversations with different stakeholders across the city.
Thank you for your explanation.
Vice President, any other question? Councilman Dorsey? Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification before I go into my questions. I just want to emphasize that this is not designed to take over the acquisition disposition of DHCD. It is not designed to do that. I will admit that when we first talked about the land bank a couple of years ago when we introduced it, that was part of my rhetoric, that it might be something that we would have just one entity to do that. That is no longer the case. And I've been clear with the administration and with DHCD about that. This is about adding capacity. And DHCD, that you'll see in one of my charts in the packet, we talk about a comparison between DHCD and the land bank, and the land bank would solely be focused on working on getting more properties out of the hands of people who are not doing anything into the inventory with it, because this is going to be done with the city, on behalf of the city, and working with communities on their outcomes, and with DHCD, because the land bank's not designed to do home repair for older adults. It's not designed to do all of the things that DHC is doing. The Detroit Land Bank took over their entire housing department. That's not what we're talking about here. They're financed differently and they have more employees because they took over the housing department. That is not the case. Also on the first bill, when we wanted authority to, when the land bank asked the land bank to do in-rem foreclosure actions on behalf of the city, the way that I read the state law, because I helped to write it, was we are allowed. But I will be happy to go back to the General Assembly to get that authorization, because it won't just help us, it will help the Cambridge Land Bank, and it will help any other jurisdiction doing that as well. INREM is a very important and game-changing tool, and I'm glad that we're moving forward on using it. So those were a couple of my clarifications. Before going into my questions, I'll just ask one or two and then yield to my colleague. I had asked during budget hearing, this is both to housing and to finance. I had asked during budget hearings for the capacity of DHCD for acquisition disposition. I got a couple of paragraphs, but I didn't get actual employees. And today we're hearing for the first time about these 100 employees. Could I actually get that breakdown that I asked for? Because I mean, that would have helped us inform, you know, some of the things that we're talking about today. But it is an example of trying to get information that I haven't been able to get. Can I get that breakdown?
Yeah, we have the breakdown of the vacancies that we have and the 50 positions that we're currently hiring for.
Yeah, and I had asked for like which ones are doing legal, which ones are doing, you know, because I think it's important that we know that as well. The other question that I had was the working on, this one is for OECR. OECR's report basically says that the land bank legislation strips DHCD of its powers for acquisition disposition. Where is that in the bill? It's not there.
I would like to defer to some of what was mentioned and pertains to DHCD's report, which we use to shape ours as well.
Well, you can get back to me on that question then, because if it's got to be somewhere in the bill. It doesn't say that in the bill. And so I'm just pointing out the fact that you might want to revise your bill report, because it doesn't say anywhere in the bill that it would strip the power of DHCD to put everything in the land bank. So I'll yield to my colleague for his questions and then come back to me.
Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to be more technical. First, with the law department, you said that there is not express authority. My understanding of the current legislation is written, the land bank will be an instrumentality of the city of Baltimore. Can we agree on that?
Yes, but the rules of statutory construction require us to conclude that the legislator or the intent of the legislation was not to create another city agency. So the state law for in rem foreclosure defines county as the city. And so unless you add land bank expressly to that, then you can't read the charter material to authorize it. It's just the way otherwise those other provisions that give the powers to the land bank that the city has in tax sales, for example, those would be meaningless. They would be surplus. So that's the way we have to interpret statutes to give everything meaning. And that's why we were saying that you have to get express authority.
So again, we can agree that it would technically, if there were any legal lawsuit, we would still be defined as an instrumentality of the city of Baltimore, correct?
There's language in the charter that calls it an instrumentality, but that's actually a term of art. So how it's interpreted would vary.
We can agree both in the Fourth Circuit as well as the state courts that any quasi-city agency created will be an instrumentality. We can look at the School Board of Commissioners for Baltimore City Schools, as well as the Parking Authority and others who have, in those instances, who are quasi-agencies, been held as instrumentality. So I would like to defer that, like we should have a conversation with that in your bill report to refer back to that. Relationship-wise as well.
Was that a question, or do we want law to respond?
I think we need to have a separate conversation, because that is just, I think there needs to be added context to instrumentality in terms of how it's articulated in your report. But I also have another issue.
Before we move from that point, does law wish to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have to be really careful with that, because Andy's Ice Cream defines an instrumentality as, you know, subject to the same rules as the city. And the whole point of the land bank is to get rid of some of that red tape. So it was created to make a balance, if you will. to streamline the sale and not have, for example, city ordinances required every time you sell a property or Board of Estimates approval. So if you start treating it as an agency, you're going to end up pretty much eliminating the policy behind it. So you have to be careful when you refer to it as an instrumentality. And I would argue that that was not a wise decision to put the word instrumentality in the enabling law.
It's in the charter, but that's neither here nor there. In addition to that, I have a question. Just to clarify, you're asking that for the interim purposes, as I read the statute from the interim, that you're allowed to delegate that authority based off the state, which is, this is my rationale, is that from the state-wise, with interim authority, we can delegate to the commissioner to carry out that duty as the commissioner of the city of Baltimore. As well as my understanding from looking at it as well as others and colleagues, that we would be able to have that authority while it may not be explicitly in state enabling legislation. It was delegated to the city of Baltimore, and the city of Baltimore can delegate it to someone else as an instrumentality, hence why the word instrumentality was added in the charter. I just want to make sure that, like, as we're doing our legal analysis for it, that we wholeheartedly look at the word choice that we use. I get that we don't, I get that we want explicit authority, but there are sometimes we look at the statute as written, it does expressly provide opportunities for people to delegate that authority to someone else. So I just want to make sure that we do add that context. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to do a couple of other things now that the Vice President is here. I wanted to clarify that we did have our Friday groups that have been meeting on the land bank have a few times had the commissioner speaking with us at the very beginning of the work that we were doing. And I think some of that dialogue has frankly informed some of the work that DHCD is doing, which is the kind of whole point of the discussion. We haven't had those conversations lately, but we have certainly brought them into the discussion there. I want to clarify also on the accountability and oversight piece. The way that this is designed, certainly we have the board, but because it answers and the DHCD commissioner, the mayor's office, the comptroller and the city council president would also be on the board. There's like a lot of accountability here and oversight. So that is, I think, really important to understand as well. And so I guess my next question for DHCD, actually for finance. Hi, Director, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. You weren't here earlier when your colleague reported on the opposition, but your bill report was very thorough, so I appreciate that. Looking at various land banks across the country and their costs. But I didn't see the sort of comparison directly to what we are trying to do. Like, for instance, again, Detroit has basically took over their housing department, and that's not what we, had asked to do. So is there a way to get much more of a sort of comparison, or is there one in there that I missed that you think is comparable? And then let me also just say that, we do have, and this is for the council, we have a subgroup of our little group that worked on a very detailed financial plan, and it is available. It is a very large spreadsheet and hard to put on a piece of paper, so I do not have it here, but certainly can add that for you. And it's very comprehensive and I think very good, and looks at a variety of funding sources with initial investments from the public sector, but over time having the land bank pay for itself. So anyway, Director, if you could just go into a little bit more detail on your analysis and direct comparison with what we're actually doing, that would be super.
Certainly. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. We had some feedback from some folks who are with us today. should lead by example here. We had some feedback from folks that are here with us today, specifically in the back of the room, that they're having trouble hearing those folks that are speaking. So if everyone who's testifying, if you see how far I am away from the microphone, if you could please be sure to do that. I may politely interrupt you if you don't, but we just want to make sure everyone who's here in person can hear what's being said. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Ms. Larson.
Nope, thank you for the reminder there. So thank you for the question, Councilwoman Ramos. So as you mentioned, what we tried to do in the finance bill response is take a look at comparable land banks from other jurisdictions that have a history with this and just talk about what their budgets look like, acknowledging that, it's based off of their model and not necessarily reflecting what's in the legislation. As you mentioned, in the 4 jurisdictions that we talked to, you really see the operating budgets kind of run the gamut. As you mentioned, in Detroit, they have a budget that funds, over 160 employees at nearly $22.5 million. On the smaller scale, we saw in the city of Rochester, their land bank funds about 3 to 5 FTEs and is about $1.7 million, comprised of state and local grants. What we saw across all of these examples is that all of them, to some degree, are dependent either upon a general fund subsidy or recurring state and local grants. In all of these instances, there was not sufficient funding from the proceeds from their property sales in order to go back into their operations. So that is sort of one of the key takeaways that we saw when we looked at this model. But I would be more than happy to go back and work with the legislation a little bit more in depth and provide an additional level of analysis regarding what we think the true cost of this proposal would be.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we'll be happy to work with you as well. I did want to follow up on one of my colleagues' questions relative to the INREM piece, and I'm super happy that we're moving forward on INREM. We do need to get more capacity for the courts because that's important as well. But we do have an amendment that addresses the law department in that it is a contingency where, obviously wouldn't be allowed to move forward on INREM until that change happens more explicitly in the state law. So I think that's super important. I mean, I think that in general, the work definitely just needs to be done. Oh, I have a question for the comptroller's office. The comptroller's report talked about lack of transparency and accountability, and given what you've heard today, based on what are the chart and the amendments that you received, I would anticipate that is probably something that you would change in your report. I mean, we do have that accountability and the community input in the legislation. It just seemed like that part was kind of missed in the bill report.
Casey Kelleher, Office of the Comptroller. I would have to confer more with my colleagues, but I do know that despite there being community inclusion in the legislation, it still won't be the structure as it exists right now that government has to adhere to. There's no Charm TV for nonprofit meetings. The city's website is probably one of the most visited in the city. There's no equivalent to that for a nonprofit. So I still think our view would be that this would be a step down in community engagement as far as what government has to adhere to.
Thank you. Yeah, the Land Bank Board would have to be subject to the open meetings. Certainly, we would want to make sure that everybody has access to that, and that would be important, and adding Charm TV there is important. I recognize that the past experience with quasi-governmental entities in Baltimore City BDC being one of them, hasn't been the best in terms of transparency, but we've learned from that, and that's why we're very prescriptive in the bill around this transparency and accountability. So I think that, it is in there. Certainly, it's not the same. I would argue that there are things that DHCD is doing well, and there are things that, the land bank spells out very specifically that DHCD is not doing. And the goal here, and I'm trying not to try to compare the two all the time, I actually, hesitated to do the chart because it's really what we're trying to do, but it does clarify various things that we're trying to do with the land bank. There are, again, another example is what we have built into the land bank is very transparent, very prescriptive reporting, but also what's going to be on the website. I love CodeMap. It's probably the best tool that I think has happened here in a long time. I love it. It doesn't have everything. It doesn't have, although I think they're building it in, where the in-rem process is and all of that. But we've built into the bill that, all of the property, there are times where I have to ask several times, what's the status of this property? What's the status of this property? What's the status of this property? And it should be transparent. And so we're really working hard on transparency as well. So I just wanted to make sure that it's been very clear, it's clarified that the parts of the bill reports that talk about accountability and community input are, especially now with the amendments that we have proposed, I think you'd know that, yes, they may not be the same, but there's certainly the willingness and the need to make it happen. Mr. Chair, would it be valuable to go through the legislation, or you want to hear from the public now? Do you have more questions?
I want to stick to the format that we all agreed to at the beginning. So what I think we should do is if you or Councilman Torrance have other questions for the agencies, we should exhaust that list of questions, and then we will get to the public to testify. Yep, Councilman. So I'm going to leave the floor to Councilwoman Ramos and Torrance. However, if another council member, committee member asks for a question, which is the case now with Councilman Stokes, I will defer to them, and then we will go back to the sponsors. Councilman Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe Department of Finance, maybe Commissioner Housing. Have we done a cost analysis on this? How much is it going to cost? How is it funded? Those are the questions that I like to answer. Maybe finance can talk about the cost on this.
So yes, in our response, we outlined what similar land banks, the annual budget of those costs in other jurisdictions. Again, those range from about $1.7 million for a small land bank of 3 to 5 employees up to over $22 million for a land bank that supports over 160 employees. And as I committed, we can circle back and provide a more refined cost estimate for what is in the proposed legislation. I think some of the things that we have to, that the major thing that's very important right now is currently the city of Baltimore is funding these types of services through the Department of Housing and Community Development's operating budget and capital budget. What we see from the other land banks is that in general, to some degree, in some cases about 50%, in other cases nearly 100%, land banks are dependent in some level upon state and local subsidies and grants in order to operate. What we believe is a risk here is that in order to get this up and off the ground, we're going to have to divert funds away from the Department of Housing and Community Development in order to get this established, in order to get it up and off the ground. And I think part of what we heard from Commissioner Kennedy is trying to understand sort of how we avoid a redundancy or a duplication of effort so that we are being as strategic with the dollars that we are trying to invest in this space as possible.
So you're saying it's actually almost like duplication of services in terms of what you just said? And the other piece is, if it's no funding, where's the funding gonna come from if the state, if the city say they have to take money out of their budget to put somewhere else?
If we're standing up a new service that requires a recurring funding source, is going to have to come out of the general fund, at least initially, to seed this and get it up and off the ground. And I think what we need to do, one of the things that I think we need to dig in a little bit deeper is especially on the bonding authority of the land bank, and understanding who the oversight for that bonding. Is that going to live with staff in this quasi organization? Is that going to be, is that going to fall under the responsibility and purview of the Bureau of Treasury within the Finance Department? Are they able to do that within existing resources? Do they need additional resources? And some of those things are items that I can commit to following up with circling back with the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Torrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I still hark on the duplication. I think about the fact that the city currently has 2 Department of Real Estates, one in the Controller's Office, one in DCHD. I think, I just want to be transparent that we have to call a spade a spade. I think, and I say this as a person who's frustrated with systems in city government. When I left city government in 2009, it was not as broken as we inherited in 2020, and that we're slowly getting things back on track and getting things right. But there's still duplication in services. There's still unanswered questions in terms of how do we coordinate across silos within agencies. I'll give you an example. We still don't have an iron out process for vendor lien because it goes through 2 different agencies, right? That is frustrating for a resident that I have who's been in limbo for 2 years because someone left and no one knew how to calculate a lien across 2 agencies. I think that what I think this bill is doing is pushing you all to think about how do we look at our systems, get around our culture in these agencies to move in a way that is strategic. I just don't want to get lost in a concept like we're talking about duplication. I think that we're talking around what we really need to say is that we still have a lot of things that stand in barriers for us to make progress. And we haven't figured out not only the capital side of it, because once we get the capital, how do we get things through efficiently in the processes that we currently have? And what I'm hearing is 2 frustrations and 2 rubs. One is we don't have enough capital, and I will wholeheartedly agree. But I also think that while we may not have enough capital, we don't have enough systems that allow us to get through. I'll give an example of 604 Cumberland. When we first went into launched buying into BMAR, it said it was a building. It was a vacant lot, right? So we still have issues with data governance that still allows us not to, while we have these pretty dashboards and these overlays, we still have not created a way to get out of our own way to actually do right and get there. I think as when we recess this hearing, we need to think about and do an analysis among the agencies as well as where are we in terms of where we truly can be in terms of capital, because while we may have gotten some things from the state, we have not completely gotten everything that we need to actually launch these bonds and the authority that we need. But we also have 2 things that we had not realized. We still have vacancies in interim. We still have vacancies in the agency itself. We still have systems that don't talk to each other. There's some, case in point, we identified there are over 400 employees in DCHD, but we had to find a vendor to do the analysis for our comprehensive housing plan, right? Capacity and systems are standing in our way, and I just want to remind everyone here, my colleagues, that this is a question that we have to have and talk about it and truly just talk about it, that the frustrations are coming from capital and systems. And we need to really, really dig deep and think about who and what systems are in our way from moving forward. I just want to lean before we move over to the public.
Any other questions for the agencies or comments from the sponsors? Middleton?
Councilman Torrance really hit it to heart. As I sit here and listen to, all the comments from housing and the other agencies, I just want to remind you that, I have been going through this. I'm going into my 18th year, and the thing that we try to keep pushing in this city is with housing is home ownership, because we know that that is really like a main thing that's going to help push that button as we move forward in this city. If you don't have an opportunity to get home ownership or live in some decent housing, I had a flashback of when I first put in the bill for the Security Deposit Relief Act, and then I had to, it failed the first time, and I had to go back and redo it and re-communicate with people and talk with the agencies again, and came back, and we had a bill that passed, and it is doing wonders for this community. That first week, 600 women with their children mostly applied, and what a blessing that was, just, for helping renters, especially as we were getting out of COVID. We can't, I think, and here we have 2 council members that are finishing up their first term, and I sit here and I feel like we're still dragging in progress. So my hope is that we now, and I thank you, Commissioner Kennedy, for all the work that you continue to do in this city with, as you have been the housing commissioner. And I'm just, I just somehow want to have that hope that we now finally get it, and we have to just continue to build upon a number of the mistakes. Representing Park Heights, again, that we know has a lot of vacant homes, and I kind of learned from the problems that were happening in East Baltimore. And so we have to keep building those steps and working together. So I'm just hoping that that happens, and this is what just keeps me going back and forth. Everything that we do new is going to be a financial risk. I mean, and we're going to have to take those risks. We're going to have to step out there and take those risks. So we can't keep saying that things that we try to work on or coalitions we try to build it's going to be a financial risk. So it is, but it might end up being a successful financial risk. So I just wanted to make that statement so that we try to continue to be on the same page, because at the end of the day, it's about helping to make government work for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to emphasize that what we're trying to do is more. What we're trying to do is more. Yes, I think I was probably the one who talked about 3 years ago, about being able to make sure that we've got a plan in place to be able to accomplish, elimination of vacant and abandoned properties. We just can't wait that long. I mean, we've got a crisis in our state. We've got a crisis in our city. We have the opportunity to try to attract all those 96,000 people that need housing in our state to our city, but we do not have the inventory. We've got lots of vacant and abandoned properties and vacant lots, and those are opportunities. Those are opportunities to address this crisis. And I think we need every single avenue to be able to get it up and running and get it done. And I appreciate that DHCD has been working hard to do that. What we're trying to do here is to accelerate the work even faster so that we can get more properties in the pipeline, so we can get more properties taken care of, so that Mr. Bell, who's been living next to his this vacant house for 30 years, no longer has to live next to his this vacant house. And it shouldn't be in 15 years, it should be tomorrow. So there is an urgency here that we're trying to accomplish, and adding capacity in order to address it is what we're trying to do here. So I want to appreciate all the agency folks who've been doing this work, and the mayor's office and all of the agencies, and I look forward to hearing from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions for our city agencies? Going once more. Colleagues, any other questions for our city agencies? Okay. We will now go to members of the public to testify. As a reminder, there will be a 2-minute time limit on testimony. There will be a clock up on the screen. Naya, if you could kindly move the clock over. And can you start it and move it down to like 5 seconds, just so we can hear the beep? Okay, see the clock? No beep. Oh, that was a silent beep. Can we? Oh, it's just pretty low. It's pretty low. Can we increase the volume of the beep? Okay, I can hear the beep, and Naya can hear the beep. So when the beep comes up, I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm gonna point at my watch. Is anyone offended by this? This is a serious question. Is anyone offended by me raising my left hand and using my right index finger to point at my watch? Everyone's clear what that means. That's my first polite reminder, because this was a problem last week. So I wanna make sure we take feedback from the community and address it, make sure that we're not offending anyone. Okay, so this means, I know that was my reaction, sir. This is the first notification, and then I will follow up with subsequent notifications. Okay, we're gonna get started with duplicates. Okay, we're gonna start, and I'm going in, I got 3 sheets in front of me, so I just grabbed 1 sheet, and that's the order we're gonna go in. It's completely random. We're gonna start with Bree Jones. Ms. Jones from Parity Development. We served on a board together. Good to see you. Is the bottom right button? Click that. Your circle's red. Okay, once it's red, you're live. Go ahead. And Naya, if you could start.
Why am I first? I came in pretty late. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bree Jones of Parity Homes. I want to just start by saying I'm so encouraged this morning, this afternoon, because of the presence of so many people here. I think it's a testament to how much we all care about Baltimore City and how much we all want the same thing. We want the city to thrive. It's clear that we all want to tackle hypervacancy in the Black Butterfly. There's no debate there. But today demonstrates that there's some healthy tension about how we should tackle that challenge. Parity is an equitable development company based out of West Baltimore in Harlem Park. And where a lot of people said that no one wants to live in Baltimore, these vacants are going to sit empty forever, what we've discovered is that there is actually overwhelming demand for our homes, but there is a lack of housing supply. And although the city and DHCD have been an incredible supportive partner in our work, and I want to lift up the leadership of Commissioner Kennedy, the reality is that unfortunately it's not enough. Although we have been able to purchase some city-owned properties, by and large, the majority of the properties that we've assembled have been privately purchased through our own initiatives. And what this means is that for small organizations like Parity, we really have to do a lot of the heavy lifting on our own to acquire properties and hold those assets on our balance sheets. For organizations that have small budgets, it's extremely onerous, but we know that we have to acquire the entire block to make notable change. It also means that for organizations like ours, we do all of the heavy lifting, revitalizing neighborhoods, while speculators and investors are able to ride on our coattails, purchasing up vacant buildings around us at higher price points than we can afford on our own. And so while DHCD can indeed do everything that a land bank can do, there's no refuting that, we're not denying that. Absolutely they can, but the question is, should the city do everything that, or what we're proposing that a land bank can do? And what I want to propose is that the reality is that DHCD is trying to turn around a big ship. They're trying to turn around 40, 50, 60 years of entrenched culture, entrenched inefficiencies. And again, although leadership has done an amazing job at trying to turn that ship around, the land bank is an opportunity for us to spin up an organization that is hyper-focused on the key issue, which is acquiring difficult to purchase vacant properties by the block to revitalize historically Black communities in the Black Butterfly. We have an opportunity to hire the biggest and brightest minds across the country to tackle this issue. And moreover, it frees up capacity for DHCD to do the other incredible work like aging in place repairs, vacancy prevention, greening and infrastructure. This is an opportunity for us to be innovative and work collaboratively across public and private industries. So I urge us to all consider what the possibility is. I know that there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern, but there is also a lot of opportunity for us to pursue something collaboratively together. Thank you.
Thank you. Struggling with the first name, but I believe the last name is Abdul Malik. Please forgive me. And if you could please, I forgot one other thing. For those testifying, if you could please at the beginning state your full name and if you're affiliated with or testifying on behalf of a specific community group or organization, please and thank you.
Well, thank you. My name is Mansour Abdul Malik. I am testifying as a citizen of Baltimore City, albeit I represent a number of organizations, which includes one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and the executive leadership, as well as the chair of a small budding CDC in Southwest Baltimore. So there's perspective here that I'm able to see from both ends, both large and small. I think it was discussed today about the duplicative nature of this type of authority, albeit I believe the intent and the passion is there. So there is an opportunity for us to be able to do something that improves our success rate of being able to reduce the vacant and blighted properties that are in the city. However, I want to make sure that we understand that there are issues that are going to come with this new authority, one of which would include this new authority, and DHCD will be competing for both federal and state resources. So that means now this finite bucket of money that will be coming from the federal government or the state, now Baltimore City is going to be fighting with itself in order for us to try and achieve the same goal. The next thing is just coordination. So as a larger developer and working through, excuse me, some of the different agencies and steps in order to make redevelopment occur, things like being able to coordinate with other developers, coordinating with DPW, DOT in order for us to do infrastructure. All of a sudden, this additional coordination adds not just time, but also money. And then there's an added layer of risk, largely because the types of financing that's lined up in order to make these developments happen are timing based. Therefore, if we need to coordinate with another agency, that then puts us in a position to miss deadlines that could put funding opportunities at risk, which Baltimore City would predominantly be the ones that are hurt. So in this instance, I think there is an opportunity to be able to further discuss what the intent of this organization is and be able to supercharge it. Me specifically, I think there should be a further look at the interim foreclosure legislation to make it stronger, put more teeth in it. A part of the executive leadership for that larger developer that I work with, they were the ones that spearheaded a lot of the land acquisition around DC, in particular the ballpark. So there's opportunities for us to discuss with other folks in order for us to make this efficient and effective for the city. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Can't read this, but it's with HAE Renovations. And I hope no one takes offense. I'm just not good at reading anyone else's handwriting on this planet, including my parents, with the exception of myself. So please do not take offense.
No problem. Good afternoon. My name is Bert Treese. I am a builder, is that better? Okay, so I'm a builder, focusing in the Parkite area as part of the revitalization project. And I'm here to kind of make a case as to why that may be a redundant effort to have a different entity, a third-party entity, to come and do what's been moving in the right directions. My experience in the area dates back to 2020. I think at the time I started getting involved with the community, there were somewhere around 16,000 vacancies. As of last week, I think we're down to 13,000 and some. And I must say, the difficulty as far as, the builder's perspective or developer's perspective, was kind of linked to the acquisitions. There's a strong desire, from the community. There's a strong desire from everybody, all the stakeholders, the DHCD party, and everyone to make the neighborhood change. But it was always an obstacle. Like, how do we go about, acquiring, how the people can go about acquiring these properties, bringing them back to the original usage. And from my personal experience, the DHCD teams, the members of the community, all the parties that I've had the pleasure to work with, they were phenomenal, and we've been able, at least, the approach of working on the block by block basis and just getting everyone involved, as in terms of this is a partnership. It's been phenomenal. We've had great success on the different areas that we've been working, and I want to commend, Commissioner Kennedy, members of the DHCD team, Mr. Scott, Davis, for the tremendous work that they've been doing, and how they've been able to be involved with the community, during the, neighborhood, meetings and whatnot, and just listen to what they would like to have happening and making sure that, they were a one-stop shop, available for any questions, educating the members of the community and the different parties involved to achieve success. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Someone from Temple Church?
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? I'm D'Antoine Brody. I'm a life resident of Broadway East. I serve as the pastor of the Temple Church in East Baltimore, and I'm also serve as on the Central Committee for the 45th Legislative District. I'm glad to be here. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's almost like buying a cell phone, and you already have one. And you put the numbers in the new phone that you got in the old phone. And all you do is use the second phone to take pictures because you've got more data on the new phone than you had in the old one. You keep saying that you want to speed up the process and make it more efficient, but can't we do that if we take these land thoughts and hand them to DHC and give them more superpower to do what it is we say that they're not doing? It seems to me we're just continuing to pass the buck. And I echo the sentiments of Councilman Stokes. No one has came to Broadway East to tell us anything about a land bill. No one has had a community forum to tell us anything. How you gonna pay for it? Where you gonna get the funding from? If Project 2025 has taught us anything, it's taught us that we've got to strategize and think. This just seems like we're just throwing paper from one side of the table to the other, complaining about a problem that we all know we have. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Last name Alexander from Harlem Park. Hey, what's that? Okay. Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, and thank you all for the opportunity to offer testimony today. My name is Alex Alexander, and I pastor the Holy Faith Church in Harlem Park. I also serve as the Vice President of the Harlem Park Neighborhood Council. Coming to offer testimony in opposition to the creation of the land bank. Personal experience, I have seen DHCD work and support our community from our neighborhood walks to our after-hour meetings, just to get clarity on housing challenges that we have, reviewing with the Harlem Park Neighborhood Council development proposals, regularly attending our Harlem Park Neighborhood Council meetings. They certainly are responsive to our community. They've taken action on initiatives, issues which we have brought to their attention. And in a time when reducing vacancy is so critical, especially to a neighborhood such as Harlem Park, which others certainly have so many, the residents, the organizations, the businesses need a reliable department capable of executing on the mayor's plan of vacancy reduction and elimination, which DHCD certainly has been. We know there's a plan to significantly reduce the vacancies. We can see the improvement, as others have said. The plan is working. The current strategy, as outlined by the mayor, is being diligently executed by DHCD. The time that it's going to take to create the land bank, to fund the land bank, even on a recurring basis, to clarify functions that may end up transferring, our concern is that it will slow down the reduction in vacancy and generate unnecessary confusion in the process. Closing, we don't want to see our community oversight and our accountability vanish, as could very well happen. The LBA won't have to go to the Board of Estimates, and that's going to certainly remove a major way for accountability to our residents and also engagement. We are on a plain path. We are on the right track, and I urge you to continue to support the work of DHCD and no vote the creation of the land bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Farmer Chippy with Plantation Park Heights. Okay. So anyone who's left, we will come back and read your name again in case you've stepped out of chambers. Ms. Namdi?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nika Namdi. I'm the Executive Director of the SOS Fund and the Chief Operating Officer and founder of Fight Blight Be More. We stand in support of the land bank legislation with amendments to make sure it focuses on the neighborhoods with the weakest housing typology as reported in 2023. It's interesting sitting in that seat, watching people play politics very clearly with people's lives. In 2022, more than 50% of the homicides in this city happened within 100 feet of a vacant building, a vacant lot, or a building or property with a tax lien. We hear a lot of talk from the mayor's office about equity. Equity is not using the same tool everywhere. It is using the correct tool at the correct time. Sure.
You were the first person to get too close to the mic. Thank you.
No problem. So the tools that you use in Roland Park, it aren't necessarily the tools that you should be using in Harlem Park. DCHD itself, its present leadership notwithstanding, has been a chief perpetrator, right? It is the lion's share of why we have the level of blight in the city that we have. And as its chief perpetrator, it does not stand as the one that should dictate for people who have been harmed most how to heal. It's funny also to me that we heard a lot about duplication. No one in city government talks about duplication when we're talking about the fact that we have a sheriff's department, we have a police department, we have transit police operating in the city, we have school police, and now we have university police at many of the universities. So if you can have policing all over the place in different agencies and they manage to coordinate just fine, we should be able to have a land bank that is working in cooperation with DCHD to work in the hardest hit neighborhoods. And it's also, I'll just finally say, the administration, I find it like hilarious. We talk and talk and talk about using policy, right, in correct ways to correct the harms. We talk about vacancy, we talk about the mayor's plan, but the mayor and its own administration pulled the tax sale reform bill. So what are we actually doing? What is the administration's actual plan, right? And this is what some of the people, right, really see as a tool that we can use going forward. And so we would like to see the land bank move forward to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Ellis.
Good morning. I'm Dan Ellis. I am the CEO of Neighborhood Housing Services of Baltimore. At NHS, we help people buy homes, about 250 people a year, and we buy, renovate, and sell houses, predominantly in the 7th District. I first arrived in Baltimore in 1998, and when I arrived, I was struck by the beauty of our city. The beauty is in the people and in the love and care that you see between people. I was also, though, struck by the physical conditions of our city, the built environment, the blight and vacancy that plagued our city, that at the time was reported to be about 15,000 vacant houses. Over 25 years of working in housing and community development work, I've seen the vacancy rate ebb and flow a little bit, but it's gone from high to high. And so what we need is tools to help reduce the vacancy issues that we're confronting in our city. We've looked at best practices around the city. In 2016, I worked with the finance department around a tax sale vacant property study that resulted in the NREM legislation, which we worked together to pass in 2019, which is helping us now. We need the tools in order to move this work forward. The land bank is regarded as a best practice in many countries or many communities around the city or around the country. And so looking at and creating these best practices is critical. In 2019, when we passed the NREM legislation, one of the arguments that we confronted was that it was duplicative of the existing tax sale system. We were told it wasn't needed because we could already do everything that was in place. We're getting the same argument today with the land bank. And so what I'm saying, though, is we've now addressed tax sale and NREM as something that we embrace and work together on, and we hope to see the same results with a land bank as we work together. We encourage a favorable report and ask for your support of the land bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. John Kern.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is John Kern. I'm with a nonprofit called the SOS Fund.
We do anti-displacement work in the city. Just quickly, I was on the west side not long ago, and we were at a community association meeting, got to talking to some folks after, and found out that a gentleman there had been living next to a vacant for years and had been trying to get the city to do something about it forever. And we actually used the in-rem eligibility tool online. We never heard back. Found out through another back channel that in fact it's assessed at $7,000 and has $19,000 in liens. So it's in-rem eligible, which is great. So we found out about that. But now he enters a moment where there's really not any way to tell what's going to happen next. Is that property going to be focused on what's going to happen? So he'll be here to testify, and we can talk more about it. The question about duplicative nature of this is striking me in a certain way. One of the biggest pushbacks we heard from community vis-a-vis the land bank, when we went out and talked about it, we did community control of land coalition meetings, is actually that the land bank would be working too much in areas where DHCD is working. In fact, that they didn't want to see it have mission creep and move into middle markets and move into the impact investment areas, that they wanted to keep it focused in the most hard-hit neighborhoods. And that's definitely the come from on this. The other question is about political whims here a little bit. What if Alice Kennedy wasn't the director of the Housing Community Development? There has been enormous change in the last 4 years thanks to her leadership, thanks to the mayor and her positioning on this. Thank goodness after all these years, we are focusing on vacancy in the way that we are. But those whims could totally change. Wells Fargo hucked ghetto loans that wrecked the neighborhoods. They now have, and I'll leave it to the equity officer to tell us whether they're actually doing equitable work now. Wells Fargo now wants to put private capital into equity work. So now we've got all political whims and interest in it, and that's great, but we need an entity that guarantees in these specific neighborhoods that are working in markets that are weaker, that are not part of the impact investment areas, and that are definitely not middle markets, that it is committed to this until the vacancy number comes down and we get the equitable outcomes that we actually want to see. I encourage a favorable vote on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. Shana Roth Gormley. Again, please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing anyone's names.
Nope, you got it exactly right. Thank you. Good morning, Shana Roth Gormley. I am an attorney at Community Law Center. We're a legal services provider for nonprofit organizations and neighborhoods in Baltimore City and statewide. One of the issues that we hear the most from our clients and from communities is vacant properties, and that's been continuous throughout the years. We know that we need every tool in the toolbox to address vacant properties, and as some of the other speakers have said, land banks have consistently been one of the best practices across the country for communities with high levels of vacancy. So it's they also have tools within their city governments and their local governments, and the land bank is an additional tool. One thing I wanted to address is the comments about the duplicative nature of the land bank. So a land bank is able to do things in a way that the city government is not. So it can do things in a more flexible way. It doesn't have limitations on how properties can be sold or disposed of, and it explicitly focuses on community goals for how properties are sold and how they're used. So it has a more nimble ability to return properties to productive use in a way that's aligned with community goals. And I think that's really one of the most important things that we want to see. We want to see these vacants returned to productive use, and we also know that our residents and our communities are the most important asset that we have in the city. And so that is, we need a direct line to hearing from those communities about what they want to see in their neighborhoods in which they've already invested so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Tia Richards.
Good afternoon. My name is Tia Richards, and I'm here today representing the community, homeowners, and renters as a liaison for Legacy residents. The land bank, in full support of the land bank and the amendment. So just first want to say that, of course, DHCD, they know, I commend the work that they're doing, but we're not trying to take away from the work they're doing. Just want to reiterate that time and time again. The land bank has a huge contribution to houses being back on the tax roll. I'm representing homeowners who live on side of vacants who can't get help with their properties. We're talking about rats eating through legacy residents who've been there 47 years. They're on the list 2, 3, 4 years before they can get help with a general income of $17,000 a year when construction costs is way beyond that. So we're talking about land bank has the capacity to go in to these neighborhoods that investors aren't looking at, that aren't on the track to be developed, and go in and make that executive decision to say, because the land bank will hold its own contractors and start and spearhead the project so others can come in. And you have to understand, in order to get schools and grocery stores and all these things, we need people in the houses to make this accountable for. DHCD alone doesn't have the capacity. The city alone doesn't have the capacity. Because if so, the homes where I serve, born and raised in Baltimore, mom in Milton Montfort area, dad Sandtown Winchester, aunties are in Park Heights and Coppin Heights. So I work for the city in all. So I wanted to say also that Broadway East community, I've been there speaking to the executive director for hours explaining the community land bank and offered to come in to explain to the community that offer is still open. I'll be there whenever you call. So, and also, just wanted to say, the tax sale list right now as it stands has hundreds of houses that are 100,000 or more and assessed at 5,000. No taxpayers are going to buy it. You all aren't going to come in and renovate it. Who's going to make the executive decision?
Thank you. And ma'am, can you come back up? I just want to clarify. You said I work for the city. I mean, you do work for the city, but you're not employed by the city of Baltimore, correct?
I work for the city, but I'm saying that I'm working for the city of the residents who all around the city, no particular community.
Right, but you're not an employee of the city of Baltimore, correct?
A contracted employee.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not, okay.
Yes.
So let me get to the end of it, and then I'll work my way back. You are not speaking on behalf of a city agency.
No, not
today.
speaking. No, the residents. Yes.
That's all I needed.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your work in the community, ma'am. First name Ray.
Hi, my name is Ray Baylor. I'm a citizen of the city of Baltimore. Over 20-some years, I own property with a vacant, abandoned property next to me. A gentleman that Mr. Kerr was speaking of. I'm frustrated. And I hear this today, and it's amazing that, you know, as a taxpayer, and coming into a city where redlining caused what has happened here, and then not to hear how we're trying to figure out ways in which to reduce or stem or eliminate that. So when I hear about financing, it doesn't resonate with social determinants of health when you're living beside something that, when you're trying, as I am an adoptee of 4 vacant lots, that I try to reduce and create land use that take away the blighting that's happening. So it's a struggle. I hear how places in the east side of Baltimore where the redlining has caused what's in effect, but I am supporting the land banking and land trusting. I think we need to get off of the pot and find something that will work in this city to reduce and to end what's going on. I'm paying my taxes, and I don't think that financing is the same as economics. And if we can do something to reverse the trend of what's happening, then it will make for a better health and a better way of life. I get it, but you know, I'm reaching an age now, I'm a senior citizen, and I'm tired of waiting. I paid my dues in this city. Right? And I think that the person who has property next door to me that over 20-some years did not do their due diligence, it seems to me that it is incumbent upon the city to make better on what it is that I thought I will be promised as a property owner during my sweat equity of maintaining property in a neighborhood that's being taken over by the new change of the trains that's coming, the Frederick Douglass train. So we're in an area of redevelopment. So there's money promised there, but we need, as people who own property there, to put them into a trust of making sure that what it is that they're going to be doing into the future will benefit folks like myself that put an honest effort over 30 years in paying taxes with somebody next door to me that's not doing the same thing.
Thank you. Amani Yasin? Yasin? Now I remember. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Imani Yasin, and thank you for getting the pronunciation right on the second go around. But I'm a leader, community advocate, public speaker. I'm the director of strategic initiatives at Parity, and I'm also the leader of the Campaign for Community Control. But aside from any title that I hold, first and foremost, I'm a person from the city of Baltimore who's dedicated her life and career to ensure that each and every Baltimorean has an opportunity to live with dignity, pride, respect, safety, and security in a neighborhood that reflects them, their vision, their hopes, and desires. Today, I'm here to testify in strong support of the Land Bank bill to establish a land bank in Baltimore City that is really our opportunity to enact a holistic and collaborative plan to address Baltimore's vacant property crisis in a way that takes equity from just a word that we so constantly speak into a plan that can be enacted specifically in neighborhoods that have been most affected by the racist housing policy that was enacted by, unfortunately, our Department of Housing and Community Development. We already understand that there are high concentrations of vacant properties that create challenging and non-existent markets that disincentivize development in neighborhoods that need it the most. These areas that have been left behind without creative, innovative, and proven strategies will remain stagnant. And with a land bank that can attract private capital, that can attract new and innovative staff, and that will work hand in hand with community to make sure development happens according to community communicated priorities, is absolutely necessary if we are to be a city who actually lives out its values that we so often communicate and talk about. When we talk about collaboration, I want to lift up the work of so many organizations like Parity, who is doing the work of development each and every day. Some of them have testified, from NHS to Southwest Partnership to Black Women Build, Southeast CDC, and so many more, and even DHCD. Our city is moving in the right direction, but this scale of this problem requires so many different tools and resources to address it, with a focus on equity and driving results that positively impact us all. Cities like Newark, New Jersey, Houston, Texas, and Cleveland, Ohio are just a few examples of great partnerships between municipalities and land banks that drive measurable outcomes. In Baltimore, we have the opportunity to lead the way in this partnership, but if we can't do that, at a very minimum, we have an obligation to follow the example of cities who've also done this work well. Baltimore has laid the foundation for housing discrimination, and we have an opportunity to be innovative in how we address equity. So, given that, I want to take just a quick second, I know I'm past time, to address some of the concerns that were raised. First of all, when we talk about being duplicative, the land bank is proposed to work in specific neighborhoods, in 15 neighborhoods that are not outlined in a clear plan at this point. There is not a lack of transparency as outlined in the bill. The land bank would need to publicly communicate all of its meetings, all of its dispositions, all of its acquisitions, et cetera. From a lack of community involvement, as one person leading the Campaign for Community Control, I have garnered almost 400 signatures in support of this legislation. I have interacted with over 7,000 people in terms of our social media, and I have hosted over 7 live events. So as an indication of what you can expect in community engagement and transparency, imagine what would happen if you had a full staff working. I'm closing out, and I thank you so much for your time, but I asked you and urged you to vote in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carrie Banaszewski. Did I say that right? Excellent.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Councilman. My name is Carrie Banaszewski, and I am here to testify in strong support of the Land Bank. I come to you wearing several hats. First, as a proud resident for 9 years of Baltimore City. I could spend my whole 2 minutes talking about my personal experience living next to vacants and how that has negatively impacted me and my son's life, but you've heard those stories a million times. I am also a almost 20-year community development professional. And specifically what I want to talk about today is my unique perspective as far as I know, I'm one of 2 people in the entire city of Baltimore who has experience working in a land bank. I spent the first half of my career in Indianapolis, Indiana, where for 3 years I ran the Land Bank of Indianapolis. And I know from firsthand how effective a land bank can be, how quickly it can enact change and transform neighborhoods. Oftentimes, vacancy and blight is talked about in a form of a cancer in a city, and I want to use that analogy today because I think it's very fitting. When you're attacking cancer, you want to attack it with every possible course of treatment. And as someone who has worked in a land bank and then worked for neighborhood-based CDCs in the city of Indianapolis who use the land bank to enact their housing revitalization, neighborhood revitalization plans, and then working the same amount of time in the city of Baltimore without a land bank, I can say without being hyperbolic that the difference is like working in a cancer ward with up-to-date and best practices, and then having to work in a cancer ward where I don't have access to chemotherapy. It is that different. A land bank is that effective. It is not an us versus them. It is the GP, DHCD, working with the specialist, the oncologist, to attack and fight the cancer that's destroying our city. And so I strongly urge the council to vote in support of the land bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Williams.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Chad Williams, Executive Director of the State of Maryland's West North Avenue Development Authority. I submitted a written testimony, and I just want to summarize my oral information testimony to the council. The Maryland General Assembly established the State of Maryland's West North Avenue Development Authority to create a comprehensive plan for housing, economic, transportation, and neighborhood development in our target area along West North Avenue. 2 mandated legislative requirements came out of that. 1 is to ensure that money is being spent efficiently and effectively by the state and the city for development, and it is happening in an appropriate way, and to provide advisory services to the city and state on planning along West North Avenue. The authority serves as a public purpose. Its function is to promote the revitalization of neighborhood, both for the benefit of neighbors and residents. By establishing authority within the Maryland 40th Legislative District, the General Assembly created a state entity that represents the first holistic planning and economic development entity in the country to address systemic root causes by redlining what specifically was established and created here in Baltimore. The 40th Legislative District has 56% of the vacancies. Therefore, this makes our advisory mandate on behalf of the state to the city an ordinance to establish a Baltimore City land bank essential, and I hope that you give it great credence. We understand the passion and intent behind establishing a Baltimore City land bank. However, we believe a collaborative partnership that is already established, as Secretary Day has said, between the state and Baltimore City, DHCD, and its current organizational structure, if provided with city and private sector resources, can meet the city's long-term remedy of vacancies. For example, the authority has already supported Baltimore City DHCD with $1 million to acquire condemnation in eminent domain. We provide our grants in advance to private and nonprofit organizations such as NHS to acquire properties through various resources, where our houses are sold through our funding between $250 to $275, and then also $50,000 down payment. In essence, it is our advice that establishing a Baltimore City land bank may not be the most efficient and effective fiscal path for planning and developing and addressing the vacancies in Baltimore City. Thank you, and I appreciate continuing to work with the Baltimore City government. Thank you.
Thank you. So, public testimony, that is everyone who has signed up. I think I've kind of triple checked this list, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. So, are there any members of the public who are physically present with us in council chambers who have not yet had an opportunity to testify who wish to do so? Ma'am? Name and organization, please, and thank you.
Hello, my name is Khalila Salim.
Ma'am, that's flexible. Yep, there, a little closer.
My name is Khalila Salim. I am a proud and patriotic AmeriCorps member doing my service year with Fight Blight Be More. This afternoon, I'd like to make a statement as a single parent, which happens to be 60% of Baltimore City population. One day when my son was 6 years old, we were riding in an Uber through Midtown around Collington Avenue. My son's face changed from innocent excitement to absolute devastation as he looked around and asked, "Mommy, why don't those houses have windows?" I just want you, all who are in your positions of power, with all of your big words and cushy titles, data spreadsheets, to please consider the silent violence and lifelong trauma that is blight through the eyes of children who grow up in these disinvested neighborhoods. How can you dream big when all you see is devastation? I also want you to understand how those hanging on those corners in these communities are more invested in the ideas of protecting their neighborhoods than you give them credit for. When you talk about building Baltimore, I hope you consider how the city can invest in construction trades for our own city residents and not the companies who will hire mostly immigrants who will do the work but will not have the pride that native Baltimore breds hold for the city we love. I beg you to please, for the love of God, do not forget us who decided to stay and watch as our city bled. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who are here? Yep, come on up. Please state your name and organization, if applicable.
Peace. Thank you. My name is Calvin Croxton. I'm also a member of AmeriCorps, completing a service year with Fight Blight Baltimore. Through that experience, I have got my eyes open to a lot of the issues that homeowners face, and as opposed to many people who have been working with these, things for years or decades, being new to that allowed me to come in with a fresh perspective and see certain things. And one thing that I did want to highlight, I heard a lot today about the legislative pieces, the tool pieces, and how this will work functionally, but I also feel that it's worth highlighting how impactful mindset is when we address the changes that we want to see. Because if we're asking why not do something, that's what you'll find. If you ask why not, you will find an obstacle. You'll find a reason not to. You'll find a limit or a boundary or some reason to not do something. But if you ask why should we or how can we, that's what you'll find. Instead of finding an obstacle, you'll find an opportunity. And I do believe there are a lot of opportunities here. and maybe some gaps. But I do believe, again, mindset is very important, not looking at this as something that the city is doing versus something that another group of people want to do, or not looking at this versus, well, my money has to go here or my money has to go there. We clearly understand the needs. Like some people have said, we've been next to these vacant homes for decades, 10, 15, 20 years, longer. So I'm glad to be able to witness and hear these conversations, and I hope to continue to be involved and to see how they evolve. And I just want to thank you for your time and for everyone who shared information today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to testify? Come on up. Don't be shy.
Good morning. My name is Kiara Gray-Ukta from Charm City Buyers. We're a developer and investor in the city that has had the privilege of scaling as an investor from individual rental properties, our first property bought in 2013 and has now become a community land trust home, to creating full block outcomes and developing properties often vacant well over 30 years, and now focusing on large-scale residential construction and land development. I personally have interacted with our over 100,000 social media followers and completed countless online classes educating approximately 40,000 people on what's happening here in Baltimore City and the opportunity to see beyond what we hear on the news and really focus on the beauty that happens on the ground here in the city. As if that doesn't keep us busy enough, we've taken that education and marketing gap we also often talk about in Baltimore City housing into our own hands by creating our own community of about 1,000 investors who are acquiring, renovating residential properties all over the city to create quality, affordable housing. Therefore, in addition to ourselves, we represent a community that over the last 3 years alone have invested well over $30 million in residential properties that this authority really seeks to impact, with most of those being primarily formerly vacant properties. And although it would be great to say a simple yay or nay about this authority specifically, I really would really look forward to learning and understanding a little bit more about the full process from acquisition to disposition. I know there's been a lot of conversation about duplication of efforts. I think we can all agree on the progress made by DHCD in the last several years, and the need for continued progress is undeniable. I'd prefer to actually take this moment to challenge us all to set both politics and kind of that really the desire to create something new and exciting, or even trying to kind of keep that control to focus on best possible outcomes for our own communities. Alice Kennedy this morning mentioned time in her presentation this morning, and I think as the market continues to move and we all know the need is high when it comes to the vacant housing issue we have in the city, we don't necessarily have that liberty of time, especially when we talk about government time to get work done, to make the wrong decision today. We all have a part to play in the eradication of vacancy in the city and improving the quality of life of our city residents. So I challenge us all to make sure that we continue to collaborate rather than compete to do the necessary work that oftentimes is very complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to testify? Okay, can you raise your hand if you're a member of the public and keep it up for me? Just raise your hand if you're not with a city agency. If you're not with a city agency, like if you're not employed by the city of Baltimore, please raise your hand. Yep, raise your hand if you're not with the city of Baltimore, like an employee. Okay, now if you don't want to testify or you've already testified, please lower your hand. Okay. I see no hands. No one else wishes to testify, correct? Just gonna ask once more. No one else wishes to testify. That's why I do multiple reminders at the end so that this fine gentleman doesn't leave and say that his voice was not heard. Please come on up. Yes. Full name and organization if applicable, please and thank you.
My name is Joe Richardson, and I'm not here.
Mr. Richardson. You can sway, but you got to bring the microphone with you if you're going to sway. So please, I need you about 6 inches away from the microphone like this, please and thank you.
All right. Can you hear me better? Okay, my name is Joe Richardson, and I'm not here to represent anybody but myself, no community organization of anything. And I've listened very carefully, and I'm a very good listener. And I would like to just say this to everyone in this room. I caution you very humbly to remember that be careful what you ask for, because what we ask for comes with adversities. It comes with things that are unseen, untalked about, and it could create dangerous situations as we move forward, and it could create animosity within communities and corruption. And these are the things that I have not heard talked about. There are some things that I believe that we should further consider, like who will run this program, who will be the one to decide who will run this program. And I've been a part of a lot of things within this city, and I'm talking about working on, I'm talking
You
about.
gotta speak, because if you turn around and talk to them, they can't hear you.
I'm talking about working with the city on tax reform and things of this nature. Put years of my time in, and at the end of the day, it was snatched right from under us, and it hurt real bad. And we're talking about having these same leaders that may be the ones that choose the leaders of this so desired organization that we want to create. And I believe that there's issues with that, putting it mildly. So I just want to caution everybody in this room, please be careful what you ask for. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. So we'll do one last call after the last call. Anyone else from the public who wishes to testify? Anyone else from the public who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing that there are none. So we have amendments that have been offered up. There are 2 amendment files. One is a one-pager that has one amendment, which it appears to just change the effective date based on state legislation authorizing the Land Bank Authority. Ms. Brown, right? Just want to make sure I got the name right. Ms. Brown, this was a law, I know that it's being offered up by Councilwoman Ramos, but this is a law department amendment, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And this amendment has been approved for form and legal sufficiency?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And Councilwoman Ramos, like just 10 or 15 seconds, I characterized the nature of this amendment correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So colleagues, is there a motion on this amendment? Again, this is Amendment 1. Yeah. We're going to take a 5-minute recess while I talk with the sponsors. We'll be back at 1:01 p.m. Okay, folks, we're going to get restarted, or resume. Okay, we're back in session for both Council Bill 23-0362 and REM foreclosure, scope of subtitle, and Council Bill 23-0363 Land Bank Authority. Okay. So we had an amendment from Councilwoman Ramos to change the effective date upon the passage of state legislation. This has been approved for form and legal sufficiency by the Law Department. Councilwoman Ramos, is there anything you want to add to this amendment?
No, it addresses the concern that the Law Department said that, and we would still need to go back to the General Assembly for confirmation, that the land bank could conduct in rem foreclosure actions on behalf of the city.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any question on the amendment? Seeing that there's none, is there a motion to move the amendment favorably? Motion, Schleifer. Second, Stokes. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any nays? Okay, this amendment passes. And this was the amendment to Council Bill 23-0362. Okay, now amendments to Council Bill 23-0363 from Ramos. First question, Ms. Brown, Law Department, have you seen these amendments, the package of amendments?
Councilmember Ramos, are they the same that we discussed? Yes, I have.
Okay, so there are 18 amendments in here. These are approved for form and legal sufficiency by the Law Department.
Yes.
Okay. Councilwoman Ramos, do you wish to discuss any of these amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of them are technical. I'll just briefly go over them. The first creates the community advisory panel that I had mentioned in my testimony. That adds another layer of community involvement and transparency. So the first 3 pages are about the community advisory panel. Amendment number 2 just has a clear definition of what equitable development is. Amendment number 3 redoes the composition of the board, which would allow for more members of the community who are in areas that have 20% or more of the properties vacant and abandoned on the board, as well as a few other appointees with experience in finance and housing. And then 3 of those members would be appointed by the mayor, and 5 of them would be, or 6 of them would be appointed by or nominated by the council president. In addition to the what's already in the bill, which is the commissioner, the housing, the commissioner or designee, the mayor or designee, the council president or designee, or the comptroller. Number 4 is technical. Number 5 scratches a section of the bill that we believe that the land bank can already do based on what's in the charter, but the wording itself isn't directly in the charter or the state bill. Number 6 clarifies that all surplus property is still going to be remaining in the hands of the city, and that the city council will still have that authority. Number 7 is some changes that the law department asked for relative to the best outcome definition, as well as adding a clause about anti-displacement. Number 8, we forgot the word property in that section, in that sentence. Number 9 is very much more specific outline of what will be in the inventory of the land bank in terms of what has to be clarified or transparent. So the address, if it's a vacant lot or vacant structure, method, status of property, status of disposition, et cetera, et cetera. Amendment 10 changes the audit requirement from 4 years to 1 year. Amendment 11 just clarifies between building and structure. Amendment 12, I think we had an added word in there. Amendment 13 is the intent statement that the council and is the intent of the council that the land bank will begin to perform its duties in the areas that is needed most. And we have some changes to the interim board and the composition of the interim board. And then requirement number 7, there's some technical issues here on 15 and 16, and then 17 is language about the board holding, the council holding a hearing after the interim board is done with its work. So those are the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions on the amendments?
Mr. Chair,
Please.
just because I don't have a copy in front of me, can I just confirm that 2 things are included? Because I couldn't tell.
Yeah,
from-
so this one that we talked about,
Thank you.
of removing the letter G
The failure
problem
to comply?
is out.
Okay, great.
these.
And Roland financing?
It's out.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't have a copy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm just going to give you a minute to.
Thank you. That'd be
No,
great.
no, to
Oh.
skim through that.
Yeah, thank you.
And you let me know when you're ready.
Okay,
I'd like to make sure law department approves things
Thank
for
you.
form and legal sufficiency.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Approved for form and legal sufficiency?
Yes, approved.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any concerns with moving the amendments as a package? Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion to move the amendments? Motion by Middleton, is there a second? That was Stokes' motion. Is there a second to Stokes' motion to move the amendments? Second by Schleifer. All those in favor of the package of amendments to Council Bill 23-0363, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Seeing as there are none opposed, these amendments pass. Okay. We have Council Bill 23-0362 as amended. Is there a motion to move the bill as amended? Motion by Stokes to move Council Bill 23-0362 as amended. Is there a second? Second by Schleifer. Burnett is absent. Costello is a no. Dorsey is absent. McCray? Schleifer? Stokes?
And I explain my vote, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I heard 3 words in here today, and the people know on this council, I've been talking about this for a long time. Equity, community, and transparency. When you ride through East Baltimore and you see Dolly Park and South Clifton Park and Broadway East and Greater Greenmount Midway, and you didn't even talk to them? You had a gentleman that lives in Broadway East, that's part of Broadway East. Nobody talked to him. Nobody talked to those other community associations. So why are we talking about transparency and community? How we completely forget the people who dealing with this stuff every day, and they always get left behind, and we want to pass a bill, and you have not talked to the people that it impacts? I vote no.
Thank you. Middleton?
Based on my previous comments and just still trying to instill hope, this idea is not going away. To me, it's a testament that there has to still be continued dialogue and communication with all of the entities. I'm happy that housing is going to have town halls, because I think that's a nice beginning. But I don't want this idea to completely disappear. There still needs to be conversation. And on that note, I'm going to abstain my vote.
Middleton is abstain. This bill has 4 nays, 1 abstention, and 2 absent. And we'll have an unfavorable report at the next meeting of the City Council. Council Bill 23-0363, is there a motion to move the bill favorably as amended? Motion by Schleifer, is there a second? Second by Stokes. Burnett is absent and Dorsey is absent. Costello is a no. McCray? Schleifer? Stokes? Middleton?
Abstention.
Okay, this bill will be reported on unfavorably at the next full meeting of the City Council. I want to thank the sponsors, all the city agencies, and everyone from the public who came out to join us today for this important discussion. We're now in recess.